I wanted to talk about Kautilya's Arthashastra in today's video and in subsequent videos as well. Why? You must all be following the fluid situation, the geopolitical scenario which is unfolding between Ukraine and Russia in Eastern Europe, and Ukraine's ambassador to India had mentioned about Chanakya and Mahabharata when the war was about to start. Chanakya in terms of diplomacy and Mahabharata where Krishna goes as Shantidut. He wanted Prime Minister Modi to act as that Shantidut between Ukraine and Russia so that the war doesn't break out. Unfortunately, the war did happen. We are in day 6 or day 7. The situation is very fluid. You must have also read about there was a 5-6 hour window, 6 to 8 hour window where Indian students and Indian citizens were given permission for evacuation by the Russian government. So diplomacy does work. The ambassador's mention of Chanakya is very significant. So I just wanted to touch upon what is the idea of Chanakya's foreign policy in his Arthashastra. So do watch the video till the end because we'll be covering all these points in our video. So now let's come to what we are going to discuss in today's video. Namaste everyone, welcome back to Zesty Nimbu. This is Sri Rekha. You will be surprised to know that Chanakya's Arthashastra, which mainly deals with Artha, which is finance, actually has only less than 1/5 of this whole book dedicated to foreign policy, defense and war. But even then, Chanakya, the master strategist, did a lot of thinking and research, and he has put a lot of information about foreign policy and how defense and war was conducted during his time. So let's discuss that in the coming videos and today's video as well. So today's video I wanted to talk about the Kautilyan state. What was the subcontinent, the Indian subcontinent during that Kautilyan time, Chanakya's time, and then we'll discuss the basics of foreign policy during the Kautilyan time, the 7 constituents of a state, and the 6 methods of foreign policy. So there are a few actors in this whole drama of diplomacy and war. So let's see those actors as well, and based on those actors we'll talk about the 6 methods of foreign policy, and we'll see the different types of kings mentioned in the Arthashastra. So before we go about discussing about the hypothetical Kautilyan state, let's understand a little bit about who Chanakya was. So who was Chanakya? He was the architect behind Chandragupta Maurya becoming the king of Magadha. Dhanananda, the king of that time in Magadha during that time, insulted Chanakya, and Chanakya wanted to take revenge on that king, and he found Chandragupta Maurya, and by various methods both of them finally defeated Dhanananda. Chandragupta Maurya was installed as the king of that particular empire at Magadha. So after installing Chandragupta Maurya, he retired and he wrote his Arthashastra. Please understand that Arthashastra written by Kautilya is not the only one. There are many other Arthashastras even during that time, the principal ones being written by Brihaspati. He has actually collated the other Arthashastras and produced a better version of all those Arthashastras. So that is the background of Chanakya. Now let's look at the hypothetical Kautilyan state. As you can see on the screen, on the left hand side is the Kautilyan state. Here is the conqueror, the middle king, the enemy, the neighbor, the rare enemy. So we'll come across all these terminologies, all these words as we go further in our video. And on the right hand side of the page you can see the subcontinent in Kautilyan times. So basically it extends towards Himalayas to the north, to the south till the sea, and there is 1,000 yojanas width between east and west, and that was the Indian subcontinent during the Kautilyan time. As you can see, there are a lot of kingdoms here. There is Magadha, Bactria, Yavanas, Kosala, Vriji, Vatsa, Avanti, Andhras, Cholas, Pandyas. These were the kingdoms during that time, during the Kautilyan time. So I just wanted to show you what is a Kautilyan state and what was the Indian subcontinent during the Kautilyan state. Let's come to the next aspect of what we are going to discuss in our video today. That is the 7 constituents of the state during the Kautilyan era. What are the 7 constituents of the state? There are 6 internal constituents and 1 external constituent. The 6 internal constituents are the king, the ministers, the fortified city, the countryside, the treasury, and the 6th one is the army. And the external constituent is the ally. So these are the 7 constituents of that state. So before we understand more about allies and the enemy and the conqueror and all those things, let's understand the basic principles of foreign policy. There is a well-known theory about Arthashastra about mandala theory. Mandala theory mentions that a king's neighbor or a state's neighbor is an enemy and the neighbor's neighbor is a friend, an ally, and so on and so forth. But this is a very basic understanding of the mandala theory. You will be surprised to know that there are 12 such elements involved in a Kautilyan state. So we'll see that further as we go in the videos. So there are 6 guiding principles which govern the Kautilyan theory of foreign policy. So that is, king shall develop his state, first one, so that he augments his resources and he stays in power in order to embark on a campaign of conquest. Second is, the enemy shall be eliminated. The third is, those who help are friends. Fourth, a prudent course shall always be adopted. That means no rash decisions are made. A prudent course is always adopted. Fifth, peace is always preferred over war. Very important. And the 6th is, a king's behavior in victory or in defeat must be just. So these are the 6 basic principles in the foreign policy of a Kautilyan state. There is a threefold obligation for a king, and that is Rakshana, which is protection, Palana, which is administration, and Yogakshema, which is welfare. These are threefold obligations of any king in the Kautilyan state. So based on this, the king talks about foreign policy, defense, war, etc. So now when we talk about a king, there are 3 types of kings. One is a strong king, an equal king, and a weak king. So of the 3 categories of kings, stronger, equal, and weaker, peace has to be made with the first 2, which is stronger and equal kings, and war is recommended against a weaker adversary since it brings gains at a low cost, at least cost. Now let's see the actors involved in the foreign policy. Who are these actors? First is the conqueror. Conqueror is the king who wants to go into war. So that conqueror has allies, has vassal states, and then a conqueror has enemies. The enemy also has allies and vassal states. There is a king called a middle king and a neutral king. These are the various actors involved in the drama of diplomacy and war. All these people would be involved in any sort of a war. Now, what are the 6 methods of foreign policy which has to be followed by a conqueror or a king? First one is called Sandhi, which is making peace. And then the second one is Vigraha, which is hostilities, which is another instrument of foreign policy. So basically it is classified into 3 kinds. Open warfare, where a battle is in a normal sense, where the king goes into open battle. And then there is secret war, attacking the enemy in a variety of ways, which is by taking him by surprise. And undeclared war, clandestine attacks using secret agents. And then there is a term called Mantra Yuddha, which is diplomatic offensive. So the war can be waged in this way also. The third method is called Asana, which is staying quiet. The fourth is Yana, which is preparing for war. And these 2 methods are used in connection with both peace and war. And the 5th one is called Samshraya, which is seeking protection when threatened of a stronger king or taking refuge in a fort. And Dvaidhi Bhava is the policy of making peace with a neighboring king in order to pursue with his help the policy of hostility towards another. So these are the 6 methods advocated by Kautilya in his foreign policy for any king. Now there is a person called a middle king and a neutral king. A middle king is a strong person who is actually having boundaries with both the enemy as well as the conqueror, and a neutral king is even more powerful and doesn't share any border with any of these people. So now in our next video, let's see more about these 6 methods. Who are the allies, who are the vassals, who are the enemies, adversaries, who is a middle king, neutral king, we'll see in our next video. Then we'll be talking about defense, about war, about various weapons of mass destruction have also been mentioned. You think it has been mentioned in Arthashastra, so let's see that also in our next videos. So I'll stop our video, the first video in this series, at this juncture. Now the question I wanted to ask you all if you apply these principles to what is happening in the geopolitical scenario today, we'll all come up with different viewpoints. I would like to see what viewpoints you all have. To be clear, I am a neutral person, I am a neutral observer. I hope you have liked today's video. Do follow me on all the social media handles and do subscribe, like and comment on the video. I'll see you in the next video. Namaste.